Hello and welcome to LSU Women's Basketball Tournament Update. I'm Patrick McGee, again joined by advocate columnist Scott Rabalais. The LSU women are headed to the Final Four. Scott, if you would, you were in Greenville. If you would kind of take me through the emotions and just everything you saw on that court after that big victory.
Yeah, I got back from Greenville this morning. Can you see the bags under my eyes? It's been it was an early day to get back, and then we got to leave again on Wednesday to go to Dallas. But yeah, a lot of emotions for LSU. I mean, because you could see it building up. You knew they were going to win. It was just several minutes of just things building up, and then the celebration, the confetti, of course, cutting down the nets. But the thing that struck me the most was they were all kind of in the middle of the court, the players and coaches and band members and some LSU people like President Bill Tate was there and Scott Woodward, the athletic director. And there was a moment when Kim Mulkey, after she did radio next to me on press row, LSU radio, she was kind of standing off to the side by herself and just kind of taking the whole scene in. And she kind of touched on it afterwards in the post-game press conference. She was just you can see she was just very thrilled. She's done this before, but to see what it meant to other people, what enjoyment they had from it was really heartwarming to her, and to obviously to do it so soon at LSU.
What do you think kind of makes this experience different for Mulkey compared? I mean, like you said, she's been here before. She's done this. Is this a different deal? I mean, she's done this in only 2 years. I guess that's what makes it different. But I mean, would you say this trip to the Final Four is a different one for Mulkey compared to what she's experienced before?
Well, I think the first time you do anything like this, of this consequence, it's hard to beat it in terms of being special for you. But and that was 2005 at Baylor, beating LSU in the national semifinals to get to the final and win. But this is her home state, and she grew up just down the road. She said how, I kind of broke my parents' heart when I decided to go to Louisiana Tech instead of LSU, where they could come see me play, just a few, not too far away instead of 4 hours away. And of course, she won national championships at La Tech and was a great player there, and might have stayed there if they'd given her the contract she wanted to be the head coach. But I think it meant a lot to her to do this for a team in her home state, that in a program that, like at Baylor, which had never done anything. I mean, LSU has a history and a very good history in women's basketball, but had certainly fallen on hard times. And for her to get it back to this level, national prominence. I mean, LSU was an afterthought in women's basketball for a number of years. It's been 9 years since they went to the Sweet 16. Since 2008 since they made it to the Final Four. For her to do it this quickly, I think is going to be one of her greatest accomplishments. It's unlikely they're going to win the national championship this year. South Carolina is such a huge favorite, and of course they have to win tonight, Monday night, against Maryland, a very good Maryland team, to get to the Final Four. But it's still a tremendous achievement. Whatever they do from this point is kind of lagniappe, I think.
Right. What has allowed LSU to get to this point? They had their detractors and doubters, and some of it was fair. They really hadn't beaten a great team in the regular season, But, I mean, what would you say has allowed the team to get to this point through the tournament?
Well, obviously they're not playing well offensively. I don't think they've played well since the first half of the Tennessee game that they lost in the SEC tournament. I don't think they've had a good offensive game yet, although they scored 73 points against Hawaii. But Hawaii obviously was the worst team of the four that they've beaten to get to this point. It's been defense and rebounding, Patrick. I mean, it's not rocket science. They're out rebounding people probably by about 11 a game. I'm just crushing them. They out rebounded Miami 49-35 last night, just crushing people on the boards. And that includes Utah, who obviously had Alyssa Pilley, who was like a second-team All-American, a very good post player. Miami was more of a guard-oriented team, so it's not surprising that they out-rebounded them badly, but they still did. And they're playing great defense. I asked Shaida Brown, who's on the LSU radio broadcast, I said, and I put it in my column, so what do they do well defensively? She said, they don't allow a lot of second chance points. Obviously, rebounding is part of it, and they're so disruptive. They had like 12 steals last night. They're really getting the passing lanes, and they're so quick their hands and their feet to get in and disrupt your offense. That leads to transition points, and that's when LSU's at their best. So if they can continue to do some of that and shoot the ball a little bit, I think they can beat Virginia Tech or Ohio State, which are playing tonight for the right to play LSU in Dallas. But it's going to probably take a little more offense. But defense travels, and defense is what's doing the job for LSU so far, for sure.
Kim Mulkey actually mentioned this during the game, during the mid-game interview about they're using apparently a different basketball during tournament play, and I've heard it mentioned elsewhere on social media. Do you think there's absolutely anything to that? I mean, offensive play has been great. Last night was a good example, but are you buying any of that somehow a new basketball has changed things?
I mean, it's been talked of in both the men's and the women's tournaments. There was an Associated Press story where before Alabama got eliminated, Nate Oates was talking about it, the Alabama coach, and they were saying how the first weekend of the men's tournament, the shooting percentages were really off. I mean, they made one of 27 3-pointers combined last night, and Mulkey's thing is that when the ball hits the rim, instead of being forgiving, it can rattle out. And she said the way just watching somebody like Alexis Morris handle the ball bounces out of her hand sometimes. I don't know. You could. It's been called inflate gate. Everyone's attached the gate to things. Kind of reminds me of the thing with the Patriots and the football, right? It could be the compound of the ball. It's always a lot of stuff with the ball that can happen. So, but everyone's playing with the same ball. And Caitlin Clark for Iowa scored 40 points last night in their regional final with the same ball. So, right. It's maybe it's not that as big a factor as they claim, but I wouldn't put it past Coach Mulkey, who is, I think, pretty masterful when it comes to psychological ploys and motivational things to try to deflect. If she feels like her team is shooting badly, to try to deflect some of that and blame it on the ball. Great. I've read something one time that great athletes try to find a blame for other things, not to detract from their greatness, so they can still have that confidence. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of that going on here.
Do you think LSU wants Ohio State?
Well, in terms of they beat LSU last year,
right?
Terry Poole obviously is an LSU starter now, and she was on that team. Probably so, partially. Yeah, that was the team that eliminated in the second round in Baton Rouge, with Alexis Morris being much less effective. She played a little in that game, but she had the knee injury. I don't think they should play Ohio State. They've got a withering full court press. Yeah. Which obviously we'll talk more about later in the week, who they play. And Virginia Tech, of course, is the top seed in that regional. Ohio State, remember, early in the year, it was LSU, South Carolina, and Ohio State. They were all going on along undefeated. Then Ohio State hit a lull, and they seemed to have kind of picked it back up and obviously beating UConn. I thought there was going to be Tennessee and UConn in the regional final. No, she's going to have to get past one of those blue bloods to try to get to the national championship game if they made it. But Ohio State put the press on UConn and affected them. I don't know as much about Virginia Tech, but I think LSU might be better off against Virginia Tech, which has no basketball tradition really in women's basketball. But in terms of a little motivation and the team that beat them last year and kept them out of the Sweet 16, yeah, I think there's something to that for sure.
Yeah, like you mentioned earlier, they hadn't played their best offensively here through the tournament, but Alexis Morris seemed to kind of pick it up. Played really well last night. Do you think they're close to getting back on track when it comes to offense?
I don't think they're that far away. If they could just get one other person, like I've said all along, if they get three players in double, you're going to get double figures out of Angel Reese scoring. If they can get her and Morris and Reese and Morris and someone else, they're really hard to beat. And obviously in the Sweet 16 game against Utah, it was LaDasia Williams, who was just fabulous. It wasn't her last night, but if they could get Flozier Johnson on track, just make a couple of outside shots. She's just struggled so badly with her jump shot. Kateri Poole made the only three-pointer they had last night. Last year, Poa, if Jasmine Carson, who now comes off the bench, who has done it in games, she scored in the 20s. She had a string of about 4 or 5 straight 20-point games midway through the season. And she obviously came off the bench for 3 big three-pointers against Michigan in the second round game that LSU won. if they could get something more out of one of those players, they would really have something that would be formidable for whoever they're playing. But yeah, I mean, they're only a few made shots away, But it could be that they're pouring so much into their defensive effort that's hampering the offensive effort. But I mean, balls were, for whatever reason, the ball or whatever, there was some shots that just rattled out and just didn't refuse to fall last night that could easily have gone in for the same price, and it just didn't work out for LSU. And that could change in a moment in the Final Four.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Scott. We'll have 2 more of these shows this week, one on Wednesday and one on Friday. The LSU women's basketball team has been playing great lately, and they've kept us busy. This will be the 3rd week of our update show, and everything's gone well. We'll be back here Wednesday, and we'll be looking ahead to the matchup, which we'll know by then. Right now, it's going to be either Ohio State or Virginia Tech. But thanks for watching. We'll be back here on Wednesday.